An international coalition of 35 Catholic organisations have pledged to withdraw their investments from fossil fuels. About £7.5 billion will be withdrawn from companies in the oil, gas and mining industry.
Well, let's talk to the broadcaster and columnist at Conservative Woman and the Catholic Universe, Caroline Farrow. Good to see you.
Good morning.
Is this going to make a difference?
Absolutely, yes, because this is the Catholic Church showing that companies have a duty and an obligation to put social responsibility before profit. And so they're really showing a lead here. Pope Francis in 2015 released an encyclical called Laudato Si, and in that he urged the world to consider that we have a moral responsibility to look after the environment and stewardship. So actually this announcement today, it's an extra 35 organisations in addition to the 60 who have already pledged to divest their funds from fossil fuel investments.
Is this the Catholic Church acting comparatively quickly?
Yes and no. I mean, the idea of needing to look after the environment is not a new one. So St John Paul II, back when he was Pope in the 90s, he talked about the importance of intergenerational solidarity, and Pope Benedict too, in terms of solving the problems we have in the environment. And Pope Benedict as well talked about this and talked about how rich and poor countries need to come together and really work for a solution. But I think this has been a real theme of Pope Francis' pontificate, trying to solve the problems of the environment or take, concrete action and urge people to really consider their lifestyles, how they live, excessive consumerism. And it's come up as a theme in several of his speeches and a lot of his writing. And I think he's really trying to put his words into action and encourage everybody else to follow suit.
Are we seeing that the Catholic Church taking on a different mantle now, becoming more political and actually instructing people on other areas of their life other than spiritual?
Well, this is, of course, it's spiritual in as much as, we have a duty. Christians believe that we have a duty of stewardship to look after the world. But I think what he's trying to do is perhaps move some of the focus away from the traditional sort of neuralgic areas that the Catholic Church are known for. So we're very known for our, teaching on sexuality, and that tends to be, and sexual relationships, and that tends to be a big subject area. But actually, there's more to being a Christian, there's more to being a Catholic simply than personal relationships, sexual relationships, how we spend our money, how we use our time, what we do to help others, look after the sick and the poor, which the Catholic Church already does really well. But actually, the environment is a big part of social responsibility and looking after.
But in terms of the planet and the welfare of the planet, there are going to be people who say, well, actually, shouldn't the Pope then tackle contraception as an issue? Because obviously an exploding population, which we are seeing, is having a pretty devastating impact on parts of the world.
Well, actually, the idea of an exploding population is a little bit of a myth. So the UN has revised its population figures and says that in the next 2 generations, the population is actually going to decrease. In developing countries, particularly in places like, in the developed world, in places like Russia, for example, they're facing a depopulation crisis. We're seeing this in France, we're seeing this in Italy, and it seems to be that there's an inverse relationship. So the higher a country's carbon emissions and the more pollution and the more a country contributes to the environmental catastrophe, the lower its population. And it seems to be that people who are talking about too many people, overpopulation, are shifting focus away from excessive consumerism, and it's the way in which we consume our resources. Actually, I don't think that there is evidence to show that we have got this, population explosion. It seems to be a bit of a myth. It's not something that's really, depopulation is not being discussed very much by the media, but when you look at countries like Italy and France, who've got falling birth rates, Russia, then actually this is a demographic nightmare we're going to be experiencing.
But just very quickly, what is the definitive line on contraception?
OK, so the Church's line on contraception is what it always is that, contraception is not something that Christians and Catholics should be using. And I think you also have to remember that contraception has a negative impact on the environment. You know, things like artificial hormones sloshing around our ecosystem, you know, condoms, you know, plastics. These are not environmentally friendly. There are environmentally friendly ways of, you know, planning your family. And in fact, you know, I think society needs to take things like natural fertility awareness and deciding, you know, how many children you're going to have and spacing your children a lot more seriously.
Caroline, we could have a whole nother debate. You've opened a can of worms there, but sadly we've run out of time. Thank you very much for speaking to us this morning.